Good evening. It is 6:02 on May the 13th, 2025. This is a meeting of the Norwalk Conservation Commission and Inland Wetland Agency. Could we have a roll call, please, Alexis? You are muted.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Clack.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Breslin.
Here.
Ms. Knight.
Here.
All right, so you have five, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Is anyone logged in from the public to comment on anything that's not on our agenda tonight?
I currently have no attendees.
Lovely. Moving on to receipt and discussion. First up is S25-654, 26 Devil's Garden.
All right, so this is a corrective action application that is responsive to a enforcement order that you had issued earlier this year. Again, the activities include restoration of a disturbed wetland area and the after the fact construction of some structures within the upland review area of the wetland. And so with that, if I can turn it over to the applicant's team, if you'd like. I'll note that all of the information that I've received, except if I received it today, has been posted on the city's pending application webpage. And I did issue a preliminary review letter, which you'll see the applicant has responded to parts of that letter already. So applicant, if you want to give the agency just an overview, that would be great.
Is this for me or for Frank, my lawyer?
Either. If it's Frank, you need to unmute yourself, Frank.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay.
Good
All
job.
right, Frank Murphy, representing Lynn Shack, who's present. We submitted the application by way of a brief review. This is a house that was built at least by 1934. The tax records show before 1940, but frequently the tax records don't have the exact date. But there is an aerial photograph that shows that the house was there in 1934. There was a wood deck added in 1993 and an addition in 1994. This was part of a two-lot subdivision in September 1978. My client, Lynn Shack, purchased the property in October 2015. It's an irregular shaped lot of 0.62 acres. After meeting with Alexis and the commission, we have prepared a plan for the commission to consider. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Steve Danzer, who's present, to discuss what his recommendations are.
Good evening to the commission. Steve Danzer, soil scientist, wetland scientist, office in Stamford. Actually, I'm going to hand this over to Tracy Shalafo, landscape architect, because she did the brunt of the design, and I will pipe in as questions, if questions arise as far as the wetland, relating to wetland condition existing and proposed. Tracy?
Steve. I'm Tracy Shalafo. I'm a landscape architect based in Danbury, Connecticut. And if I might share my screen with the commission, I'll do that now. Thank you. right, is that visible to everyone?
It is.
Yes.
It's
Wonderful.
maybe a little small, but
I'll zoom in a bit here. Okay, here we go. So just to orient everyone, here's Devil's Garden Road. Here is the residence. Behind the residence is an existing garage, and there's an existing shed here, and an existing deck with a hot tub sitting on a platform. I'm going to present the wetland restoration plan. This is to restore the area that was cleared, and some wood chips were spread within this area. The depth varies from about 0 to 6 inches, and that disturbance occurred generally about here, where you see this cross hatching. So it is quite a wet area. So this planting plan incorporates native wetland plants that are tolerant of varying conditions from wet and some to dry. There's an existing willow tree approximately here. So under the willow tree, given the shallow root system, we have some native perennials proposed there. And then some native shrubs indicated by these circles. So these are throughout. To restore the entire area. Any dots that you see are the approximate location of existing trees. And we did observe some vines growing on those trees. So as part of this plan, we would remove or cut those vines as high as possible in the canopy and discard that from site. And any other invasive vegetation would also be pulled with the roots and discarded from the site. That said, there's a lot of existing skunk cabbage growing throughout this area that Steve Danzer and I observed even a couple months ago, which by now must be very robust. So that's something we want to respect and protect. So it was poking up in between the wood chips that seem to be rapidly decomposing, which is a good thing because hopefully those wetland soils can perform their hydrologic activities without the wood chips interfering. That said, in areas where the wood chips are thicker, they can just be moved to the side for the native shrubs to be planted. So just to sort of give you a rundown of some of the native shrubs incorporated, we have arrowwood viburnum, we have winterberry holly, spice bush, sweet pepper bush, and inkberry. There's one proposed tree, and that's the native river birch, and that's approximately here. We did receive the comments from Alexis last week, and I believe we've addressed most of them. The ones pertaining to the landscape plan were that we plant on the neighboring property, which is this portion here. Initially, we had just called for a native seed mix to restore that area, but we've since added several shrubs to move the restoration and the trajectory of the plant growth along. So several shrubs were added there. And another comment was that perhaps there should be a demarcation between the existing lawn and the undisturbed wetlands. So this area here is lawn over wetlands, and that has existed for quite some time. Mr. Danzer, Dr. Danzer might be able to answer that question if you'd like to know for how long that has been maintained as lawn. But that is this line. And something important to note, there is no machine access to the rear of this property because there's an existing retaining wall and steps, and there's really not a route around on the neighboring property. So all of this work should be done by hand. And that includes the proposed demarcation boulders. And that's why we're calling for 18 to 24-inch diameter for those boulders, because 2 men have to be able to handle them, 2 people, I should say, and place them along here, countersink them slightly, but that will serve as that visual and physical barrier that this is where the maintained lawn stops, and this is where the naturalistic wetland area begins. The seed mix that is called for is the wet mix by New England Wetland Plants or Equal. It contains at least a dozen varieties of native herbaceous plants, grasses, and sedges. So that will be applied to any bare areas after the trees and shrubs have been installed. Silt fence would be installed at the at the lower edge of the work area to ensure that no work occurs beyond this disturbed area. Also, we've provided the shrub planting detail, the tree planting detail, and the silt fence site detail. And here is the plant list with the sizes. Some of the shrubs are 2 to 2.5 feet tall. That's based on availability. These are usually the standard sizes available for winterberry holly. And then the other shrubs are 3 to 3.5 feet tall. The perennials are 1 gallon containers. Seems that we have plenty of wood chips to work with to mulch underneath the trees and shrubs, so we may not even have to bring any new mulch in. We usually like to have a mulch saucer under each tree and shrub just to help seal in moisture and keep the weeds out. I think that about covers it. I'm happy to answer any questions related to the planting restoration, and then anything to do with structures perhaps could go to Attorney Murphy or to Dr. Danzer.
Commissioners, do we have any questions on planting plan? I have one about leaving the mulch in place. Alexis, is that something we'd recommend, or will the wetland soil recover from being covered up with mulch to whatever depth this has been covered?
Right, so I heard the applicant estimate 0 to 6 inches, and maybe Mr. Danzer can opine on when does at what depth of mulch is there or Tracy, when is the wood chip layer acting as mulch as opposed to a kind of a top layer above the soil? Mulch generally is as you said, Tracy, it is good at retaining some moisture, but it's often placed to as kind of a weed barrier. And so, yeah, either of you could answer.
All right, I'll jump in on that. Well, if this was like a non-wetland landscape and you were going to mulch your shrubs, you'd probably want to put between 2 and 4, maybe 5 inches of mulch. But that said, it's not necessarily wood chip mulch. That could be in any of a variety of types of mulch, and you have to be prepared every season to come back out and reinvigorate it. Often when you drive around, the landscapes, you see what they call volcano mulching, which is just excessive mulching, which is not good for trees because it locks too much moisture in and kind of encourages fungal infections and other animals and things like that. Back to our wetlands, though, there's a couple of things. Originally, when we looked at this early winter, we had the assumption that we were going to specify that the mulch was going to be removed, because normally that's what you would do if someone deposited mulch in the wetland. It just seemed like, unprincipled. But when we started working with the site, we'd been out there 2 or 3 times from the winter to the spring. What we noticed is that skunk cabbage has emerged through the mulch, and that's on one hand that kind of shows that the mulch is not really inhibiting growth because the plant life has emerged, but more importantly it poses the question of how do you remove the mulch without damaging the skunk cabbage. And if our end result is natural wetland cover, wouldn't that be kind of antagonistic to our goal if we were going to disturb the skunk cabbage? So we gave it another site visit, and we went back, and then at that point I was pretty opinionated at that point that we should probably try to leave it the mulch in, just because the plants are already emerging through it. As far as when it would be expected to degrade, it's already degrading. It's a wet environment. I can't say like it's going to degrade this year, next year, or the year after, but I will say, like, if you come back there I think the real question is it really, inhibiting the wetland plants? And I don't believe it really is. Probably in a matter of years, it will be gone. If you remember the history of the site, this wood chips were not taken from off-site and deposited on-site. This was actually the current property owner had cut down a tree that they believed was a hazard or diseased or whatever, and they chipped it and they left the mulch there. That's all. It was all just one tree. It was it was basically sourced from a tree that was already there in the first place. So it's not exactly. It's not like someone brought in like bark chick,
Loads and loads
exotic
of it.
bark chick. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
definitely not loads of it. All right.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
That's the 2 cents I wanted to hear. Catherine?
Hi, thank you for the plan and for the explanation and kind of sharing your iterations through about the mulch process. My question is moving forward on the property is just understanding that section of lawn that's wetlands. I have some concerns just because, obviously when the Wetlands Act was put in place, it's not like all of a sudden all the wetland properties are put in. And so while I understand the argument of historic use, that typically isn't meaning that that means that it's grandfathered or that we don't still have a responsibility to protect the characteristics and function of the wetlands. And changing it from wetlands to maintained lawn is a substantial change to the characteristics and potential function of the wetlands, obviously. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with just considering that's a significant, it seems like a significant portion of wetland that we're just saying, okay, we're gonna be fine with changing that characteristic and the function there.
Catherine, can I just ask though, for clarification's sake, and I think I've been on pretty much all the calls for this property. Maybe I missed one, but isn't that the lighter hatched area with the arrow pointing at it? Hasn't that historically been lawn?
Since at least 2010, it's possible it's been that way. As far as 2004, I couldn't really conclude looking at the aerial photographs that early. But one thing to keep in mind is that the current property owner acquired the property in 2015. That area was already lawn, already maintained as lawn over wetland soil. So if you're tasked to restore what they did, the alterations that the current property owner did, we did that. If the task is to restore things that they did not do, then yeah, you can consider that lawn. But I just assumed that that was a fait accompli because it was a condition that was inherited by the current property owner.
Thank you, Steve. And then Catherine, I wasn't trying to disagree with what you were saying. I just wanted to make sure it was clear for the record that
Yeah, I don't know if there's a legal standing that says that there's a historic, I mean, I understand that there's a the historic, but I don't think that's a legal stipulation in terms of things get grandfathered. So, I mean, properties change hands all the time. And so, in terms of the enforcement, it's about when things are noticed and they come before the commission. So to the extent that lawn was put in, it should have been permitted and it should have come before the commission.
Right. Alexis, is there any precedent that we can refer to for a situation like this? And you're muted.
The activities that this is responsive to are the activities listed in the order, and so that order did not look at whenever the historic lawn area to the immediate rear of the house was established.
Okay.
We have I don't have the GIS open currently, but my recollection during the enforcement process was that there was a pretty clear demarcation of lawn going as far back as aerial photos could be interpreted.
And
then-
so, oh, sorry.
I get,
Additionally, I'll just add, so then section 4 of the regulations does provide kind of continued maintenance. So there are certain as of right activities that are spelled out in the Wetland Act, specifically for single family residences that have to do with the continued maintenance. So you can't change the natural and indigenous character of the land, but if you have lawn, for example, that lawn can be continued to be mowed. But what you have here, just making a circle back to Ms. Knight's point, what you have here is a corrective action application, and the order clearly does require that the recently impacted wetland area be restored. So that is very clear. The disturbance of that wetland was done without a permit and is now being considered with this corrective action permit. And with any permit review, you can certainly have a back and forth with the applicant and articulate what you feel is an appropriate restoration of that area, and that may include a protection of that restored wetland. So
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
yeah, I mean, I think some of it is that, when we're looking at it or when the orders come before us, one of the reasons why we ask for a wetland soil scientist to go out is to really understand what are the boundaries of the wetland, because we don't necessarily know until you see. And so, even if somebody was looking at aerial photographs when they notice disturbances, you wouldn't necessarily suspect the lawn area because you don't have the soil report in order to understand like the demarcations. And so to the extent that when you know, and so it's a question of how do we have a conversation and be like, how do we do better by what we're trying to protect here, which is the characteristics and function of the wetlands. And, having a lawn, now we don't necessarily, we have no buffer to the wetlands. And in fact, we have activity happening on a regular basis in the wetlands where, there might be, we can't monitor chemicals or things that are involved with lawn control, and we have no buffer. And as a commission, we sit here and we have lots of applications that come before us where we're trying to negotiate and have conversations around adequate buffers between activity and the wetlands to further protect them. And here we are saying no, I'm just trying to raise the flag of like, we've got lawn on wetlands and no buffer.
Yeah. Heard. I think that the twist is that it is, again, I don't disagree with you one bit.
I don't, there's no legal standing that
Yeah.
says that there's a historical right. I mean, you can't find any precedent in law.
Right. So where are we at with this one? It is a receipt and discussion.
yeah,
So we can't decide anything tonight. All we can do is continue to discuss it and or ask for more information. So the piece of information I would want to hear or have confirmed is, does that line of the approximate edge of existing lawn with the line of the boulders and the small boulders, the line between the darker hatch and the lighter hatch, does that align with where we think, based on the aerial photographs, that really where we think the line was and or should be kept or drawn? Tracy.
Thank you. I just wanted to state that Alexis was kind enough to share an aerial photograph with dimensions with us last week.
Awesome.
And I took those, she had offsets from the existing structures. So actually the plan was revised so that this line does coincide with those dimensions that she sent, which were the dimensions to the edge of existing lawn pulled from the satellite images before this disturbance occurred.
Awesome.
And
Thank
also,
you.
I'd like to point out that there was a little bit of an encroachment back to here. If you can see this very lightly dashed line, and that we then pulled the restoration to the, I guess this is to this, actually to the further to
East.
the east to
Yep.
give more more wetland restoration per Alexis's direction.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, then to move this along, we haven't really talked about the structures within the upland review area. Does anybody feel strongly about the greenhouse, for example? I mean, I know the
Frank, could
property
you
owner
speak
feels
to that?
strongly about it and that she probably wants to keep it.
Well, Frank, could you speak to that about, you visited yesterday?
Mr.
Frank?
Murphy?
Can I address that?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
please.
Okay, well, I'd like to address a couple of things. First, in terms of the aerial photographs, the aerial photographs show that lawn area was there long before my client purchased it 10 years ago.
Yeah, we've agreed upon that. We didn't, there's no, I think everyone's on the same page there.
And you have to remember that this house was built around 1934 and has been a single family residence ever since. Now, with regard to the lawn area, my clients have done nothing but maintain the lawn as it was from the time they purchased it more than 10 years ago. And I'd like to remind the commissioner, as Alexis pointed out, your own regulations refer to residential uses in paragraph 4, and what it refers to is the state statute under which you operate that says in section 22A 40 A4. Quote, uses incidental to the enjoyment and maintenance of residential property. It also says, quote, such incidental uses shall include maintenance of existing structures and landscaping, and unquote. So that the intent of the legislature and the legislative history bears this out, was that there were a couple of things that the legislature was mindful of when they passed the statute in 1972, and one of which was protecting pre-existing residential uses. So we are asking that we be able to keep the lawn because it's been there for so long, and it does absolutely no harm to the wetlands. This is
Mr. Murphy, actually, could you address the structure specifically?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I just wanted to finish my thought on it.
Oh, sorry.
But this is on the outer fringe of the land trust wetland, which is 6 acres, and its potential impact is absolutely minimal. Now, in terms of the shed, the shed is like a potting shed. There was a raised garden there. And the shed was added around it. One of the previous owners had planted grapevines there, and apparently they made their own wine in their basement. But the shed is very small in size. It's approximately 16 feet long and 10 feet wide, and in there is just an area for potting of plants and maintaining of it, and there's some tools stored in there. Once again, it really has no impact on the wetland at all, and we would ask that we be able to maintain the shed as it presently exists.
Thank you. Any commissioners? I just want to get it out now so that it doesn't sneak up on us later if anybody has any hesitation. I don't. I'm doesn't
Yeah.
bother me.
I do want to just note that both the deck and the shed are not zoning compliant. So y- the they will need to comply with zoning regulations. It's not just the wetland regulations that need to be complied with. So just keep that in mind, though at the end of the day, the wetland agency, may determine that those structures don't have an impact on the wetland. Zoning is going to have to follow up, and would not be able to issue a zoning permit for those structures, either crossing the property line or within the zoning setbacks. Zoning setbacks with the new regulations have been reduced for most zones. So it's not a big setback, but I believe both of those are within that setback.
Okay,
And so if zoning had to requires you to move them, then you'd have to return to the wetland agency to modify the permit. And that's part of why I wanted to point that out, because I don't really have to have the applicant return to us to the wetland agency if zoning requires the relocation of those structures.
I'd like to comment on that very briefly. First, we have not reviewed this with zoning, and it's a question of which comes first. Now, if you say from a wetlands perspective, it's not going to be approved, then there's no sense in us making an application if we need to the Zoning Board of Appeals. There is a slight encroachment on the abutting property to the east. That abutting owner is well aware of it and has reviewed the wetland plan that we have proposed and has signed a consent to it. Similarly, on the western border, where there is an encroachment, where there will be planting, we have reviewed the plans with that property owner, who has, in part, the land to the west is subject to an easement that's been in existence since the original subdivision and is in the deeds to both the Shack property and the Fogno property to the west. In terms of the area where there's additional planting, so in the area of the Fogno property, Mr. and Mrs. Fogno have also signed a consent to that work and are well aware of any encroachments. So that I don't think that those items should be an issue at all.
Right. So the civil part of that is not a municipal concern, and zoning, for instance, would not get involved at all with the plantings on 30 Devil's Garden. But for the shed and deck, those typically would require, those are considered new construction and new structures, and those would require a zoning permit. And even though the abutting neighbor may not have an issue, if they're not compliant with the zoning regulations, they could not be permitted.
Can I ask a quick question, time-wise? And Catherine, I know you've got your hand up, but we're just receiving this. We've got time. Is it possible to let this sit until the applicant has a chance to get things squared away with zoning, or at least get a rough idea of what they're going to require?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have 65 days without an extension from the applicant. You have 65 days before you either render a decision, or if you make the determination that this is significant regulated activity, to start the public hearing.
Okay, so I think and I don't think there's anything dire happening right now with regard to erosion or harming the wetland beyond what's happening at a very, very passive level. So maybe that's something the client would consider, is to leave the wetland application open long enough to get a read from zoning as to what they may require, and then maybe change the application to the wetland or to Conservation Commission accordingly. Does that make sense to you guys? To Ms. Shack and
Doesn't really make sense to me. You're gonna ask me to, so I should need to go to planning and zoning. And get permits ask for permits for the shed and for the hot tub area.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, and I'd recommend that you can go right to the zoning enforcement officer, Tammy Maldonado.
okay.
and we'll just sit tight on our end until you get a read from them. And if it sounds like they're gonna make you move the shed, then you can just update these plans accordingly. Or change its shape or whatever. And that way, like Alexa said, we don't have to do this twice. And that would save everybody time and hassle and probably save you some money. So
Well, I've spent a lot of money so far, so.
yeah, sorry. Catherine, thank you for being patient.
Yeah, I think just one of the things to flag that is a concern is just looking at the shed and the proximity of the wetland line is to think about in the plans, the water runoff and filtration. So it'd be really great to see a bit of buffer filtration planting to help. Typically we've, asked for that in other applications.
Lynn, is there a door out the back of the greenhouse? Like-
No,
No, the door is just at the front toward the deck?
yeah.
Okay. And are there any like
It's not
downspouts
really
or
a
gutters or
greenhouse. I
anything?
wouldn't call it
Or
a
it's-
greenhouse, but, excuse me, I'm sorry,
That's-
what?
No, never mind. You answered my question. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's just a plastic coverage wired to keep the animals out.
Yeah.
That was a vegetable garden.
Got it. Okay.
Well, and
Uh,
it's also a level area, so I don't think there's any runoff,
There's no runoff.
appreciable runoff from the shed.
Right. So I just have one more and then I think we can move on. Alexis, are we happy with the proposed sizes of the trees and shrubs?
So typically you do have, not always, but you frequently require that shrubs be closer to a 3-foot minimum at the time of planting. We've just found that, especially with a seed mix, that the lower shrubs have a little bit of difficulty competing with the herbaceous cover. But that's something that it's really just the two Ilex varieties. They're the Jim Dandy and the Red Sprite cultivars are a little bit more compact. So that agency would kind of be up to you.
So instead of a 2 to 2.5 foot height, what would we shoot for?
So you often require a 36-inch height at the time of planting.
Tracy, is that a big ask?
No, not a big ask. We just might have to do not a species change, but a cultivar change, because as Alexis mentioned, these tend to be compact. But if we're worried about them getting lost within the seed mix as it grows, we could just change to a different cultivar that is more sizable.
Okay. So maybe that's just something to consider next time something gets submitted to us, hopefully after we've learned a little bit from the zoning department. Okay, if no one else has anything they'd like to ask or contribute, I suggest we move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shack and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to, oh, sorry. Okay.
I have a problem.
Oh, no.
I have, oh, wait, okay, hold on, might be back up. I have intermittent loss of network, but I think it just returned. So hold on a second. I was going to bump off and then it's returned. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
Wonderful. We're going on to S25-655, 12 Riverwalk Lane.
Okay, so this is also a corrective action application that's in response to a enforcement order that you recently upheld. The house at 12 Riverwalk, when it was constructed back in the day had a boulder buffer demarcation row that demarcated a wetland buffer, and then closest to the furthest rear of the yard is the 5 Mile River, and the area next to the 5 Mile River is wetlands, and the area between the boulder row and the river had been cleared of all but I think 6 canopy trees, and the applicant has submitted a application to attempt to restore that. Miss Rowley, I didn't know if you wanted me to share the screen again, or if you would like to.
No,
just-
that's fine. I'll have more trouble doing that, so.
All right, so let me just share my screen. The applicant received a preliminary review letter from myself, and has since this kind of remains the same. Let me scroll down to this part. So at the top of the page would be where Riverwalk Lane is, which is a cul-de-sac off of West Norwalk Road. There's the residence and deck. This is the wetland buffer boulder demarcation row. The blue is the 5 Mile River, and the wetland area is kind of approximately here. Let me see. I think in the application, Ms. Rowley had submitted the survey. So again, boulder row, wetland limit, water course edge, and it's this area that had been cleared. The original permit had a buffer planting along the boulder row, and then as you can see from this, I think this is a 2004 survey, I'm not sure, the edge of the wooded area had been approximately here. So Ms. Rowley, I don't know if you want to kind of just go over what you've proposed.
Okay, so first I want to say that when I bought this house in January of 2021, the backyard was cleared already. So, and we talked about this the last time, I guess a month ago. And you do have, back then we showed aerial pictures of that. So I just want to make it clear that this was already cleared, and I showed pictures before I bought it. So going forward, I just wanted to put that out there that like I inherited this problem. But anyway, moving forward. So to the right and to the left, you'll see those are X's. Those are currently already there. Those I planted those when I first moved in. Those are Leland's cypress trees, and I did plant the grass also. I was unaware that you could not plant grass. Getting notified, finding out that this is a problem. The grass has not been mowed and is left naturally. Planning on planting all the way in the back, I guess those red boxes, those red squares, that is going to be, I don't know if I guess you can read it right there.
Dogwood, red dogwood.
Yep, red dogwood, which does very well. I went on the website, looked up all the plants that would do good depending on where it is. We have a huge wildlife problem here also. So I had to find things that the deer are not going to destroy. Those cypress trees have, over the last 4 years, although they're not supposed to, deer are not really supposed to eat them, they destroy them. There was a willow tree in the backyard that I also planted, destroyed, and is no longer there. So I'm trying to find things that, one, will go with the wetlands, and two, that that I'll be able to control, that not have such a deer problem. So we did juniper mid-yard. There's red bud trees up in the front, and way in the back, yellow loosestrife. There are 2 original shrubs off to the left there.
Mhm.
And then the shade trees that are still there. There is one dead tree that is still standing. Yep, right there. What else? I don't know.
Diana, are you proposing to remove that dead tree?
Nope. Well, I don't know. I have removed dead trees before, and then I find out that that's a problem too. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Alexis, what do we know about that tree? Is it something that we need to
We
include in this?
it can be included in this. I don't know if it is
So,
dead or dying.
so I have removed, like in January, I've removed dead trees that that were kind of safe to remove without harming the river. We left that one because it is slanted over the river, and we were afraid it going in the water. It's totally dead. It's probably going to come down. I'm surprised it hasn't come down in the wind yet. You can clearly see it's
Not healthy.
it looks hollow. But the other one, like, we took down again, was hollow, but was more facing the property, so it came down on the property, not in the river, and that's why we left that one. So I didn't want to take any more trees that, I mean, we clearly could see that they're dead, but I was waiting for it to fall and then figure out what the next plan is. So
Okay.
you tell me. Do you
Well,
want it
and
down?
Oh, let's put a pin in that, and I apologize for jumping in on you. But I think that was the extent of the landscape plan, right?
Yes.
What you just explained to us? Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I let one of the commissioners ask a question?
I don't think so.
Okay, this is super helpful, by the way, the diagram and what you've done. So thank you very much. Ms. Breslin.
Why,
Alexa,
thank you.
Thanks, Alexis.
This is helpful. I just want to, I am not certain, and I wanted to ask about the other commissioners about the junipers and the red buds. To my knowledge, neither of those are really moist soil trees and shrubs. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't want you to plant something that is just gonna die or whatever. So I just want to make sure, check with the others before.
Okay, so I did a little investigating on that, because Alexis did mention that.
Oh.
I know closest to the river, the soil is very wet underneath. And where we're planting the juniper, after Alexis mentioned that, we did check, had somebody come in with just an auger just to go down a little bit to see what the soil was. And where the juniper is and the trees up front that's going to give a little shade, that is dry soil.
Okay. Just want to make sure before you do
Yeah, I
anything.
didn't want to plant. Listen, this is a big, huge expense. And
Exactly.
after she mentioned that, I said we have to do a little bit of investigating and find out if the soil is wet, because then I had to change everything before the meeting. And
Right.
we checked, and we did it during that last week of rain, right in the middle when the rain stopped, because we knew if the ground was wet during that rain, we have a problem.
Right.
And it was dry.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, I just
want to ask Diana and maybe Alexis can verify or tell us with the aerial photos. How you say it was cleared before you moved there, but do we know how many shade trees used to be there before they were cleared out? Because most of the trees that you're planting, I don't really envision as shade trees. And there used to be I thought it was a fairly deep shaded area along the river there. So I don't know if Diana or Alexis, who has the answer to that?
Well, I think there's some debate there.
So I can show you let's see. Where are we? So this just goes back to 2014 in September. So September is tough because it's leaf out, but maybe for this discussion, it's helpful. And so there had been this tree line as shown on the earlier survey, a tree line approximately in this location. There, you can tell there's kind of an open-ish area here. This is the tree that's shown on the survey that died well before Miss Rowley purchased it, and it's actually appears to not have leafed out in September of 2014. And then along the boulder row, you can kind of see glimpses of it in this shadowy aerial, were the planted shrubs. So 36 shrubs were planted when the house was constructed within the first 10 feet adjacent to the wall. Then this was a somewhat open kind of little sliver, and then the trees here. As far as the count, I know that let's see.
Okay, well, you don't have to dig too deep. It doesn't look as deep.
I know that we observed 3 large trunks when we took site photos. Those were relatively recent trunks, and I think that those were the trees that Miss Rowley was, just discussing that she had removed 3. But I don't know if there were others before that. And so here's another 2016 aerial photo, and you can see the trees. Most of them are still there, and then the shrubs. Let's just go to.
So I guess Diana, while
Yeah.
Alexis has given us the replay here, is there any chance we could
go
get
ahead.
you to swap out a couple of those smaller trees for maybe a variety that would get to be as tall as what was there at some point previously?
So we are I'm here 4 years, and in the 4 years, I could tell you there's been 3 trees that have fallen. And this is what I took down in January. You see, that is rotten clear through.
And that's which tree is that? Or
I
where was
took
that?
this tree down in January,
Where was it? I'm sorry.
right on the river.
That was on the river.
So
Okay.
that's one of the trees probably in that picture. September, another tree fell just last September, right? Was that September? And in January, this tree, and there was another tree that was rotten that was actually split in half that had to come down. So
Okay.
that was done in January, because in September, another tree came down on the river and hit the edge of my house.
Got it.
It's very wet that close to the river, and I'm kind of scared to plant trees that big, that if the water is that wet and there's high winds, that will hit the house.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why I took a lot of things into consideration when I picked what kind of trees and shrubs, like I don't mind planting it. I want to fix this situation. I didn't cause it, but I'm working with you guys to fix it the best I can and as soon as I can. But there's a lot of things I'd like to keep into consideration.
Yep.
I don't want something falling because the ground's wet and it's not going to be. You remember that the water in the past 4 years, 3-4 times has
Comes
come all
up
the
there
way
quite a
up.
bit. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Okay.
we got to keep those things into consideration, I hope.
Yep, definitely. So the red buds, how big will they get, guys?
I think I looked 30 feet. I can
It'll
Google
get
it.
30 feet if you're lucky. It should
Yeah,
be
they're
like
closer to
15 to
uh,
20 is my
15
Like
to
a
experience.
20.
dogwood.
Yeah.
I don't know. And they're how far from the house by estimation?
Oh,
I mean, 15 feet if they were to fall over. I mean, I'm willing to be somewhat flexible here if you guys are. I think this is I would be curious to know what is in between all of these plantings. Like, is it the northeast wetland ground cover mix? Diana, is that something you and Alexis discussed? Like what's on the ground. So right now is grass going wild.
right. So
what's it going to
that
be?
was, we talked about like maybe also adding a mix to the grass, but I need to figure out if that's going to take. Like, I really don't want to waste money
Yeah.
and throw it down. If I need to pull up the grass, that's not going to be,
Yeah.
I don't mind doing that and doing that slowly, but that's not going to, I'd like to get the plantings in. And I mean, what do you suggest at that point?
Yeah. Alexis? I mean, my thought is a nice short shave at the right time of year and then seed it down, but I'm not the expert here.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have I think that there's a desire to increase the biodiversity of the wetland and return the native plants to the wetland and buffer, but you don't want to do that in a way that requires a lot of disturbance. And so when you seed, it's has the highest growth rate or vitality, if it's raked into the soil. But I'd agree that if it's cut and then kind of poked into the grass, either with a rake or an aerator, I think there's ways to do it so that you don't have to rip up the lawn, the grass that had been the lawn, and introduce some additional plant species in there.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so that's something we can probably get into the application verbally, somehow, right? Assume.
We could,
Easy enough
yep.
to get in there. Okay. Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, if you could throw in a few more red maples or something, that would help, I think, with the canopy to the extent, you're comfortable with that and they're fairly tolerant of wet soil, of like kind of the larger trees. I think, and also just follow Alexis's guidance just on the juniper and cedar trees. I think she put that in a proposed memo or something. There can be an impact on some of the other plant life that, you might want to be coming up, just because as the needles accumulate, it does tend to, we have that in our yard and we're battling it with the acidity changes to the soil.
Right. I totally forgot that Alexis had provided a preliminary review. What have we missed on your preliminary review, Alexis? What else have we missed on your preliminary review, I should say?
Recollection, but I can pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah, the evergreens don't add a huge lot of value.
That was removed. Right. So just kind of Right, anticipating that some of you
sorry.
will likely ask for shade trees. I think that she's answered the conditions of the soils, that juniper probably would be fine, though I would note that cardinal flower will not. Cardinal flower likes its roots extremely wet. So there might be some tweaking of the location of some of the plants.
I could put them behind the juniper, then that's fine.
Put them in the back.
And then again, I know that you said that there was nothing there, but there had been 35 shrubs along the Boulder Row. And
But that was back in 2004, probably.
Yep. And then that this is what Mr. Clocky had just asked, kind of what in the white area in between the shrubs, how do you see that being maintained or enhanced?
So I should have read this too. Sorry, Alexis.
That's good.
I should have reminded us.
And it's probably why, yeah. It's
This
probably
is
why
good,
you're
'cause
making a face today.
You asked all the questions that I guessed you might. So.
It was a quiz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know the hesitancy with the juniper. Alexis, when I was down there last week, sometime when we talked, shrubs. So the reason why we went with the juniper is because of the deer. Biggest problem. They eat everything, including the evergreens. We talked about putting up some kind of spraying, which I didn't know that you could do, which we will do to try to protect them. But I know in the past that they eat it anyway when they're hungry enough, even though if you've sprayed them or if you've had a rain. So that's why we were doing the juniper. And we did it across that way to hopefully keep them back a bit, and protect. I mean, I don't mind, if you really want me to change something, but it's not that I can protect it. I can't be out there. We did try to do a little barrier to see if it would work to keep them off, because we anticipated that you would want us to change some things, and they went right over it. So, I mean, they obviously can jump. So.
I'm of no help here.
Yeah, me neither.
All right. So maybe I'd say, based on the comments that I've heard the commissioners make so far, I'd recommend that you give me a call later this week, or you can come in, maybe make some tweaks to the proposed planting plan. But we can talk about it more, the pros and cons of various stuff, and get you closer to all positive comments from the agency.
So no decision will be made.
They can't tonight, so they're not allowed to make any decision tonight. They statutorily.
I know we had the 2 week that you said. Yep. So we talked also about that I moved. I have surgery planned, and which is supposed to be today. I moved it back into July so I can get this plan done. Yep. So I'm hoping for a sooner response, being that it's planting season now, and after that July date, I won't be able to do anything. So I'll put that out there.
I think we're not far off, right, Alexis? I mean, I think, like you said, there's some tweaks that need to happen between now and the 27th, which will be our next meeting. But I don't see any reason why Alexis couldn't have a draft memorandum ready to go by then, so that when we review what's been updated, we can also hopefully approve it.
I mean, quite honestly, we probably wouldn't, do you want to plant these in June anyway?
Well, Yeah, but she needs time to get it done before the surgery and stuff.
Well, no, but I'm saying if it's after, like you want, it's something that, because after you could do it in the fall is my
Well, yeah,
point.
Diana, we'll give you, usually Alexis writes in, you've got 6 months to do this, or you've got 3 months to do it once you've started, or, there's language in there. So
Yeah, right.
I think we just make it, put it however works best for you, because there's not any sort of major timely implication here. So I think we can just work with that, right, Alexis?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think, I
no
think
reason
it
to.
just needs, kind of like how you did the minor tweaks at last week from, you submitted and then you said, actually use this one. I think you're talking some minor revisions to your planting plan so that you get all these guys to vote, yes, we'll move forward with this. And if we can iron that out this week, then in advance of the next agenda, the new material will be posted and I can provide the agency members with a potential draft resolution to approve. They may not. They can continue to have discussion and send you back to the drawing board. But
we don't want to.
but it sounds like they're trying to get it resolved.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been like, as soon as I got the letter, I showed up the next day. I kind of wanted, I know I wasn't getting a decision today, but I hoped in 2 weeks that I'd have it. So I have all of June. So that's kind of how I planned,
Sounds good.
So
Okay.
how far off are we? What is,
Yeah, give me a call. I think I've taken a lot of notes and I will kind of take all the commissioners' comments and amalgamate them into one message for you.
Coherent message.
If you can call me or come in, either one, but or I can email you and I'll make a summary of my notes about what I think that they're looking for.
okay.
Diana, you've got an excellent resource at your fingertips.
No,
in
Alexis has been very helpful, and dedicated a lot of time, when we go down there. So she's gotten to us where we, to make it an easier process. I do appreciate that. The big trees I worry about. I don't want to have to be planting trees and then having to take them down, or that they fall and so for me to plant them, I would plant them far away from the house where it's not going to do damage. I mean, and then the water is just going to probably rot them. The water gets 5 feet high down there.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's anything we can really do about that, unfortunately. But I think you're on the right track with maybe a little bit bigger and maybe a little farther back to maybe get a little more of the restoration of the canopy that was there at one time. So Alexis will help you out.
How many trees are we talking?
I don't know, three guys, something like that.
Just a couple things to replace a couple of the junipers, maybe. Another thing, Diana, the deer love the evergreens. Deciduous trees, they don't really bother too much.
Once they can't nibble them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think planting the smaller trees, 1.5 inch caliber, it's going to be a very long time before it becomes a danger
tree.
to your house.
we'll all be
We're
gone.
talking 30, 40 years. Just to be honest. So,
yeah. Also something to keep in mind. Okay, we'll keep moving if that's okay with you, Ms. Rowley.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for everything you've done to get us this far.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on to 215 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
So,
S05, S05? 223?
S05, yes.
Big trees.
In the Wayback Machine. So this is a 2005 permit was issued. 2000.
Oh, hang on a second. Diana, can you still hear us?
I'm gonna mute her.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Sorry, we're muting you.
You're good.
We're moving on, so never mind.
Okay. 2005 permit issued for the development of a lot with a warehouse, and the 2005 permit included removal, destruction of a portion of a wetland, and in return, wetland creation at another part of the site. In sometime it was transferred from the original permit owner to a new owner, and then there was a permit application to, well, no, an extension application, but that ended up being withdrawn. The conditions of the permit, some of the conditions of the permit, I just want to say up front, were never completed. So this application is both a modification of what was originally approved in 2005 and a transfer of that 2005 permit to a new entity. But I also want to clarify that in addition to doing the work, or really removing some of the work that was originally proposed, there still are some unmet conditions of the permit that the new applicant will need to tackle, and I haven't quite figured all of that part out yet. So that's my disclaimer. And on the pending application webpage are all of the information that the applicant has submitted. And then there is also the most recent permit, which was the 2006 transfer of the permit. And within that permit, you can see all of the conditions of the original permit. And so I guess I see that Mr. Sumalides from Land Tech is here, presumably for this application. So I will turn it over to him to give kind of a brief overview of the purpose of this application.
Good evening. My name is Andy Sumalides. I'm a principal at Land Tech. Yeah, I'll just take you back in time a little bit. I'll just share some plans. And we weren't involved at that time either. We've been involved kind of since then, in between, looking at other proposals for this site. So here is the 2005 approved plan. So this is Martin Luther King Drive here. Here are the limits of the property. At that time, there was a proposed warehouse that was approved for this site. Zooming in here, you can see here, if you've been to the site, there's a retaining wall here now that was built as part of this approval. And you can see, I'll just kind of quickly run through here. You'll see I'm outlining where the existing wetlands were at that time. So this portion of wetlands was actually filled in. And this portion here was a new wetland creation. So that's what we're looking to finalize, I would say, or complete. There was a bond posted for this work that I think the city still holds. So as part of this application, we are looking to basically legalize a use that's going on right now. So what was built, and I'll just show you quickly what the drainage infrastructure was for this. There were some catch basins that were to be installed on this property that discharged right into the wetland, essentially. And the wetland functioned as a, call it a stormwater wetland, functioning wetland. There's also runoff from Martin Luther King Drive. There's a catch basin here, various catch basins that connect. And that went into that wetland as well, or go into it today. So that's taking road runoff and runoff from this property. There was walls constructed. Again, I'm sure many of you have driven by this site. And there's some large retaining walls that were constructed, and basically this site was leveled out, and it's essentially a gravel parking lot today that's kind of almost overgrown. So what we're looking to do today is, again, that drainage infrastructure that I mentioned earlier, that some of that was installed and discharges into here. There's also this pipe that discharges, again, from runoff from the road. What we're calling out is basically for this work of that stormwater wetland creation to be completed. Looks like some of it may have been done, but we'll work with staff and making sure with our environmental team to make sure that's been established and what needs to be planted is planted there, and any invasives that may have come up are removed and replanted with what's supposed to be there. What's currently on the site is this office trailer. So who owns the site now is Two Men in a Truck, which is a moving company. So what they've set up is basically a temporary mobile office on a trailer there. And they occupy the site with storage of their commercial vans and vehicles. So what we're looking to do is essentially legalize that use of a commercial vehicle parking lot, call it, to house those vehicles. We will be removing this trailer since it's not allowed per the zoning regulations, and then just occupy this site as it basically currently stands today as a gravel lot, and legalizing the use essentially. So no real earth moving material is taking place. On this pipe that discharges into the wetland, what we're looking to do is install a hydrodynamic separator. That is basically a manhole structure that has a swirl chamber in it, that takes out sediments and fines, and also sediment, and also takes out oils. So it's a proprietary, basically stormwater BMP, best management practice, to be installed on that outlet pipe. There is no opportunity here really to do any infiltration on this site. And that's probably what was the impetus behind this original design as well. There's previous, I think, contaminants on the site potentially. It seemed like the site was capped with some type of liner. When we went to go dig test holes, we hit that liner and put it back into place essentially. So this is kind of like a cap site, call it, from an environmental perspective. And what we're looking to do now is essentially legalize this use that the current owner is occupying. And here is that wetland planting plan for that wetland enhancement that we've put into the record again, saying, stating that we'll do it essentially. So this is what was the proposal again for that area. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a bond that sits with the city to do that work, but the owner will take on this work and as part of legalizing their use per se. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Andy, is there any change to how the water is managed adjacent to the site, specifically from MLK getting directed into the wetland, the created wetland? Basically, are we still going to be taking water off MLK?
Yeah, that was what was previously approved as well. Yeah, there's no plans for us to change any of that.
Okay. Would you mind putting your plan back up on the screen
Sure.
for us? And actually, can you zoom in a little bit for us if you don't mind? I'm on a small screen, so.
Yeah, so this is the MLK, all these are the catch basins. This is catch basin,
Right. That stays
All
as
come to
is.
this low point and then through this 36-inch pipe that dumps right into this wetland.
But the catch basins that are on the site, so there's one to the left of the trailer, one to the right of the
Correct.
trailer.
One here,
They
one
stay
here.
put, but they get intercepted. The water gets intercepted by this separator. So at least
That's
it's
what we're
getting
proposing. That's not in now.
right.
What's
That's
in now is
proposed.
these two catch basins and this pipe that goes in. So they
Right.
did that based on that was allowed back in 2005.
Yep.
What we're saying is, we can do a little bit better today, right? So we're introducing that hydrodynamic separator.
Do you know the extent of the capping of the site? I mean, does it go pretty much up to that concrete block wall right there, or?
I would imagine. I don't know all the history on that.
Okay.
Is there any plan to do anything with the retention the retaining walls on the side. I'm looking at a Google map, so
Well,
Sure.
why don't we either maybe Alexis share it, or any if you want to share, street view or aerial view.
Yeah, I
So
can
we're all
do
looking at the same thing.
it just
Yeah.
looks like it's falling apart, and I don't know if that's
that.
Yeah, so it's a concrete block wall. This is a 2005 aerial. So this is the constructed wall
right.
here. This is where the filled wetland. Um,
But the other
oh,
side, of
and then you're talking about like all these.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's way more than 100 feet away from the wetland line, or maybe not. Doesn't, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, 100 feet about here. So
Which wetland? The one that was
Th-
there
this-
before?
this
No,
one.
I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
right.
the current wetland.
Ah, okay. Just curious the surface with their resurfacing or redoing, you know what I mean? If any of that, I don't know, impedes on the review, the buffer, the whatever it is. It just looks like there
Yeah.
potentially is work to be done.
Well, and the calculation for the site water runoff, Andy, I assume hasn't changed. There's probably no infiltration assumed. And the pipes that are in the ground and the separator that's now being proposed is sized according to the anticipated.
Okay.
whatever
Basically what's
flow.
there. We're not proposing any new impervious. If anything, I think we're reducing it a little bit with our proposal, actually. It is a gravel lot, and we're basically taking the impervious surfaces that are on the site and treating them.
Okay. So it's not going to change anything, even if.
Right.
And then what change, do you know what needs to change in the planting plan? Because I just saw there were some invasives that were to be removed 20 years ago. I mean, is that what's still there?
Yeah, you can kind of see there.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
it's
what
a
that
lot of
is?
Pragmites.
So that'll have to get removed and then replanted.
So the original plan, which was designed by Bill Kinney, called for the planting of like 86 shrubs, 5 trees, and some 3,000 plugs. And instead, it was seeded and planted with 34 shrubs in 2009. And that modification that was never approved was, I'd say, lacking in success. So, yeah, as you mentioned, the previous owner had asked for a bond release multiple times, and the preceding agency members declined. So as part of this application, I would definitely encourage you to look at Mr. Kinney's original design, look at what's out there, and propose something that gets it closer to what was intended. Whether
Right.
it's we would plan to do the Bill Kinney design, but we can have that discussion.
Yeah, Bill came up with a nice design. That's why we kind of left it the same.
Yep.
So it
Okay.
seems like they did some of the work, right? They obviously built the wall, they excavated it out, but I don't think they planted it right, so.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Let's
So
see.
I had received this application relatively recently, so I haven't done a preliminary review letter, but I will finish that up this week, and then we can talk about like just the mechanics of transferring the permit and that kind of stuff.
Great. Okay. Well, I don't see any commissioners raising hands, so I think we have received this. I think we understand mostly what's happening, and there's more work to do, but we will touch base again in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night. Okay. Moving on to S24-637A, 6 Range Road.
So this application proposes to make amendments to a recently approved permit. I'll just share my screen again to get you situated. There we go. So Range Road is, Witch Road Lane, which is in Rowayton. So Rich is across here. Off to the page is the 5 Mile River. This is Range Road, and you had recently approved development of these 4 homes. Number 6 is this home here. This is where the historically the house that was kind of the mother lot of all 4. This is what it looked like before development in 2017. There was a small little house here and then the driveway entrance here. So what was approved for this lot was a demarcation wall and a proposed restoration of areas to the east of that demarcation. So removal of the driveway off of Witch and planting of and enhancing both the wetland and the wetland buffer. So that's where it is, and I will stop sharing my screen and turn the microphone over to Mr. Hawes. And Mr. Hawes, you're welcome to share your screen, or if you'd like me to share my screen to show your application materials, I can do that as well.
Thank you, Alexis. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
If you could share your screen, that would be great.
Okay.
So thank you, everybody, for the time. I know we're the last on the agenda here, so I'll try to be as expeditious as possible. My wife and I are the new homeowners over at 6 Range Road. And what we have put together here is a proposal to change the demarcation of the wetland buffer area, or the demarcation from boulders to a fence, which is a 4-foot cedar box fence. Additionally, we've proposed to modify the fence layout for the backyard for some additional, well, in general, we want to put the fence in for safety purposes. We have 3 young children and a dog, and would love to be able to fence in the backyard area. To create a bit more functionality and balance within the plan, we are proposing to shift the fence slightly into the buffer area, but no more. There will be no less than 25 feet from the wetland line, which is the kind of the standard in the neighboring properties or the neighboring development with the additional 3 houses. We are going to hand install this, so no machinery. The fence would be no closer to the 25 feet. The full planting plan will be maintained. Some will be relocated from the area from the right-hand side that you're looking at here over to behind the pool area. But our objective here is to maintain the planting plan in full, but just extending slightly into that buffer area on that right-hand side.
And so on this map, the dashed, the crosshatched area is the buffer. This is the wetland limit line is here. So anything on this side is wetland. And originally at 35 feet was a proposed boulder row. It goes like that. And so you'd be proposing a fence that would kind of, instead of a boulder row that followed the limits of the wetland, you're proposing the fence that's shown in blue here. So you'd be having a little bit more of a buffer here, but remove this part and this part. So
that's exactly correct.
Okay, Mr. Hawes, is there anything else you'd like to add before we let the commissioners ask their questions?
No, just to point out, we'll be following the boulder line across the vast majority, and then maintaining the boulders in the original place between what you're looking at, that vertical fence line, and where you have those 3 boulders demarcated there as well.
Wait, so the boulders go away though within the fenced in area though, right?
That's correct. Yeah, they're maintained to the right of the fence.
Yeah.
But correct, they would be replaced by the fence itself.
And
So-
can we
so
assume
these
that the
boulders-
lawn extends to the fence?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Sorry,
So
Alexis?
these boulders would be removed? All of
Um,
these?
You know, some of them are actually quite ingrained in the property. So some of them that are at more of the surface level would be removed, but some of them that are actually embedded in the property would still be maintained there. It would just, we would put the fence either in front of or behind, depending on what kind of made the most functional sense.
Gotcha.
Okay. Ms. Knight.
Hi, yeah, this was a recent application that had come through, and just to provide you with the context of the discussions that we had had in allowing the pool to move, it was originally supposed to be on the side, was the compromise was in terms of just with the boulders and having that demarcation and that buffer area be as it was. And so this is, you know, kind of moving against, you know, the compromise or the previous agreement with the developer on what the pool was, you know, and putting the pool in there. And, you know, nothing substantive has changed other than you need to put in a fence or something, but there's still adequate spacing to do so within kind of the existing buffer and demarcation area. So, you know, it's food for thought in terms of like thinking about compromises that we come forward with, to then be asked to further compromise already was a you know, discussion and settled as far as coming to the commission with this. That's my view.
Thanks, Catherine. Other commissioners like to chime in, ask a question?
I have a question, having a below ground swimming pool, isn't there a fence around that area already?
Ooh, good question.
I would think that there should be. And I know when we grew up in New York State, we had to have one.
Yes, the backyard area is not complete, which is why, you know, we are obviously asking the commission to be able to approve before we do, you know, any fence work back there. But the intention is also for a pool fence.
So there is no fence right now.
The backyard property is still in a bit of a raw state as we were working to finish the pool and also obviously speak to you all before we made any modifications to you know, the backyard.
All right, that was a no, is what I heard.
That's-
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? But there's no decision tonight, obviously. We're just taking this in and discussing it. Hearing none, I will thank you, Mr. Hawes, and we will, well, Alexis, do you need any direction from us so that we can act on this next meeting? All right, we'll just go ahead and break that ice then. This was approved very recently, the plan. Not a lot has changed since then, other than you've bought it, and whether it may have been suggested to you that you could come to us and, you know, say, oh, well, I'd rather do this instead of that. Whether or not that happened or whatever, I think you're going to have a hard time talking this agency into diverging from what they approved less than a year ago. So I would say that Alexis, I mean, other commissioners go ahead and chime in, but I mean, most of the commissioners that are on this call were part of the group that approved the plan that was built. So haven't heard anybody voice an opinion saying, oh, never mind, we can do it different. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, unless Alexis has anything better to contribute, we would probably at the next meeting reject this application for the fence and moving the demarcation boulders and all that stuff.
Can I ask a quick clarification
Sure.
question?
Yep.
What is the I echo what others have said, and to Catherine's point, as usual, like the compromising, and we'll just keep compromising until it keeps pushing back. But this was recent, and and I think that we would really not be doing a service to our roles here if we just kept compromising on our existing compromise. However, my question specifically is around the fencing and the material versus the boulder demarcation. If I don't know other commissioners functionally how a fence versus a boulder demarcation line, if following the buffer as agreed upon, what is the functional difference impact wise to the wetland?
Yeah, I don't think there is any. I know that a physical demarcation is important for
Yeah.
maintaining that buffer. So as long as I think you've, and I don't remember discussion really at, I think the applicant had proposed a boulder demarcation road because of the plethora of raw material that he had available at the site, right? No, I don't think that there's any benefit. So if you're saying, would you consider a fence instead of a boulder row, but in the same location, if that's where you're headed?
That is where, if it's a safety concern, if it's about kids, about keeping animals in, I understand that, and I can understand, and I think if that works with now out impacting that material, that portion alone, I can understand.
Would the commission consider like a swap? So if it were closer in some places but further in others, and that square footage were the same? I'm just trying to prep my discussion with the homeowner.
Alexis, if there's going to be, first of all, I concur with, Commissioner Knight, and it's like, you can't keep compromising, because where does it stop? And being it is a recent thing, it seems like the only thing I would be able to accept would be, you can put that fence along the boulder line, but I wouldn't compromise the line the way it is now. Fence, remove the boulders, put in a wooden fence that could be easily moved, with, where the boulders, signify it's there for, and it's not easy to get around, to make changes.
And if Alexis, if you mean compromise, I want to clarify that. Sorry, Catherine, I didn't look up and see your hand. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, if we're talking about a foot or 2 foot, 2 feet, sure. If we're talking about moving it 10 feet back in one, no, I don't mean, we just did this.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just trying to kind of, because I know
Options.
feedback that I received from applicants is, well, what are they,
Yep.
what do they mean? And so thank you for the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be clear, like, look, it's not that the rules around fencing haven't changed. It was known that a pool was going in, it was known what the space was to require, and there was agreement that there would be a boulder demarcation. I don't see anything, starting to now say, well, we'd rather have a fence instead of boulders. It's starting, you're disturbing, what's been put in already. And there's nothing to say that you can't put a fence in just inside the boulders. I mean, that's.
Yep. No, understood. And, this is Tyler, the homeowner. Obviously I don't have the benefit of the prior meetings and context, but understand, it sounds like the lengths that were made to, approve and kind of get this through originally. And, we're kind of zero basing it, saying, we would love to be able to extend this, area for, candidly, some additional play space for our children and maintaining the beauty of the property through, a fence that I think accommodates that. If there is a balance that we can strike, as applicants here to, get a bit more space on that right-hand side and give some back behind the pool, and even potentially look for a place in the property where we can do additional plantings, we are more than open. We want to accomplish two things, and that's safety and some functionality, which, candidly is just allowing our kids to be able to play in a space that is nice to kick a soccer ball around. So we're selfish in that way and understood. We just want to do the right thing by the space and our family.
You're on mute, Steve, if you're talking.
I said we completely understand and respect that. Thank you, Heather.
Welcome.
Thank you for also being understanding of where we're coming from. Alexis, do you need anything more from us on this?
No.
Okay.
For
Okay.
clarity, yeah, applicant, you're also welcome to reach out and talk to me later in the week about what the agency has said and any potential options.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Thank you to the agency. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tyler. All right, moving on to. Oh. Okay, discussion and decision, S16-499B, 284 New Canaan Avenue.
All right, so this application, you closed the public hearing finally at your last meeting. Again, it's corrective action application to remedy some activities that occurred or didn't occur as required by their 2016 permit. So you have 35 days to render a decision. So you can either have continued discussion tonight and make a decision tonight, or you can punt to your next meeting. I know that we had talked about some of you may have missed a public hearing. And so if you have missed any of the public hearings, prior to, I guess, diving into things, if you could confirm that you are familiar with all materials and have watched any public hearings that you've missed this night.
I did watch the public hearing. You guys
Bless you.
videoed well. YouTubed well.
Riveting entertainment, I'm sure.
Bless you.
Okay. So based on the last meeting, I did attempt to include a draft resolution in my memorandum. But of course, at the end of the day, it all belongs to you. So discuss, have fun.
Catherine.
The closing rebuttal at the end was very emphatic that this was what they were seeking to basically approve was not an expanded yard, but was what was permitted originally in the 2016 application. And I would just wanted to note or put out there for the comment is that where they're doing the catchment area, if they wanted to do the 2016, then above that, above ground would be a seed basin slope with some plantings on it and would not be part of the active yard. So, you know, in terms of like the space or what was approved, you know, we're kind of allowing then an expansion of activity over and above what was in the 2016. If you look at like the bottom part below where they had like the chain link fence and the proposed bin, so they had a seeded area. So if they wanted to do that seeded area over the catchment basin, then I think that would be in line with what was previously approved and correct in what they were saying. If that's what they're asking for, then the top level should be what was in the 2016 plan.
And what they had put out, what Brian Carey proposed is that the effect, and I'll start by apologizing for letting this one. I don't think I managed this one very well at all. I think I let my just general disgust with the lack of respect to boundaries, whether actual or just on paper, it got in the way of me looking at this technically, which is what we're supposed to do. And so it's the function of the wetland that we care about. And I'm just spitting out what's in my head. And to respond to what you're saying, just to get everything out there, where I totally agree about not increasing, that it doesn't feel right to increase the amount of surface area that can be used as a yard. But I have to balance that against the quality of the wetland after looking at the two approaches. And at first I thought a third party review would be needed to prove that. At the end of the last meeting, I sort of became convinced, even though I didn't like the whatever posturing about whether we're improving the yard size or not. Having the separator, having more control for runoff as what's proposed in the draft memorandum, the draft resolution, may actually end up being an improvement to what was previously approved in 2016. And the other side of that is I guess we can pull the plans, but there's the surface retention area or whatever, and then beside that there's like nothing to the left on the plans. And I didn't realize, and Paul had pointed out for me, that that was just basically old pavement that had grass growing up through it, but really wasn't serving any sort of function. And so I had been seeing that previously as natural, naturally behaving landscape, which is actually not true and was poorly illustrated on the drawings. But anyway, that's just where I'm at. I was exactly where you just started. And I don't know exactly. Yeah, I guess I just explained how I've gotten to where I am now. So does any of that have value to you as far as the function versus the actual perception of how the area is used, is the distinction I'm trying to make?
Yeah, I mean, there's still they had like the grass, 3-foot wide grass area that would be kind of a demarcation, and I don't see that on the new plans.
Can we pull that up, Alexis? Where's the?
I think that had to do with the runoff, if I recall, right? Like into the original catchment.
I don't remember.
I think I see the site plan in my sleep, so.
And Alexis, you're muted, so before you say anything. There you go.
All right, so sorry about being muted. So this is the proposed plan.
And that area, we're going all the way back to what was the boundary that was approved in 2016, right?
well, I think it's up for debate, but yes, I think the area of the, well, we can look at, so this was the 2018 modification of the plan. And we can look at the 2016, but yes, there are this chain link fence. Well, that's not a chain link fence, that was kind of these, this is called out, let's see.
And on this plan, up is northwest and to the right is northeast, I would say roughly.
Yes.
Captain, you're talking about,
I'm talking out the bottom of it where it shows like the planting, there's a 3-foot wide grass demarcation area, which is kind of now moved into an active yard space.
Oh yeah, it's all
Down
packed
here.
down with
Yeah,
gravel.
so that whole area where they're putting, most of the catchment basin under was going to be planted.
Right. And so this is proposed chain link fence here. And then this is existing chain link, as it says, chain link fence here. And I think it comes down to, well, in 2016, this is where we propose our chain link fence to kind of go around. And so this is our yard, is what the applicant has argued.
And then can you flip to the proposed plan?
How is it yard when they they have the seed basin there and the grass?
wait, I'm missing this totally. I'm sorry.
Like here, if you read here, it says 3-foot wide grass wall or whatever.
Where is it?
Swale.
Can you point it
Yep.
out?
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
here
the swale.
planted seed mix and wetland mix.
In the stormwater detention basin.
Oh, I see. Because it's replacing, right.
Zoom in just another tick, please, Alexis.
Mhm.
So they're basically proposing to, and we're asking them to pave and put a curb around the southwest and southeast side where it says chain link fence.
Right.
And so yeah, you're right. So that's how wide is that? That's like 50-foot wide, at least 75-foot wide from from the property line up to where they previously planned the first bins. That was going to be green. Yep.
Mhm. Mhm. The lines aren't loading, but it's closer to
50.
maybe 50 feet.
50 feet, right. Right, and then where they to the bottom left-hand corner is where it says, so the swale was supposed to go through and catch all the runoff from everything uphill, which is up on the plans,
Right.
and direct it down to this catch basin that was supposedly going to fill up, need maintenance, blah blah blah. But not get used. So it is definitely your buffer zone, Catherine, is not being achieved there. And I guess you could assume that 3-foot wide grass swale, this is what I assumed originally, that to the southeast, that down below that was natural and was to remain as such.
Correct. I mean,
Right.
what would be the
But it
point of planting
was
3-foot wide grass?
right.
swale?
So you'd be having to drive across the swale every time if you wanted to use that tiny little, triangular pie-shaped whatever corner of the lot. So but it didn't have active. It's debatable whether it had active function with regard to, the upland or the buffer.
I mean, you're not planting things to then drive over it and park.
True. Yeah, that's true.
But I don't think they were planting. So I think this was the an area of contention last time. And I think that what we came away with is even if they had left it there is no planting specified there. at least that I can see, right? Which we talked about, Paul talked about, is broken concrete, broken asphalt. And so the function of the 3-foot wide swale was to further filter some of the runoff that would then go into the catchment system. So that was not needed. To me, it's the catchment system seems to be an upgrade from what was originally here. I don't think
It's
there.
an upgrade with regard to actively managing surface water. How about that?
Yes, which I
Specific.
think, right, is at this point in the condition of this yard, the condition of the area should be probably the priority than, at least in my opinion. I don't know. Again,
Well, what was proposed was actually, this was a good plan. The basin was a good plan. What was not good, and I'm not sorry to talk smack about, who came before us, and Alexis is obviously in charge at this point, but I mean, there was a bit of an oversight in that southeast bottom corner as to like, did we just expect them to leave it alone? Did we not anticipate them, did we anticipate them actually trying to operate within bounds, which they've obviously been, hesitant to do, to put it nicely? I don't know. But I guess the reason I'm mad at myself is that we needed to have gotten the third party opinion sooner, because all we have right now is the owner's professional opinion. We don't have another professional opinion to stack against it. And as soon as they appeal this, it's going to, house of cards. And they're not going to stop. This is not how it works at this situation.
But we
So
did ask for the third party.
we did, but I mean, Alexis, where does that leave us? Like, they played the game better than we did. They stalled.
I mean, so you have a few options. So again, it's a corrective action application where the applicant believes that they are responding responsively to that order with and the order says that they didn't do their stormwater management and that they've cleared and filled this area. So they are removing the expansion here, and then they are proposing to do stormwater, but to do a different system.
But I guess
with this, with the stormwater area where you're directing stormwater in more or less the same place. So two very different designs. One's all above ground and using vegetation, and then one is below ground using catch basin grates, pipes, mechanical separation, and then underground infiltration. And so I think it's a matter of, do you think that when you initially required a third party review, when you look at their original application, which was this. Well, this isn't the best example, but they proposed a substantial expansion of, let's see if I can find them. It's a horrible one. So instead of doing any corrective action for this filled area, they're proposing a substantial expansion of the yard. And that's when you had requested a third party review. And I think that the question for you is, I think it's very clear that this needs third party review if you're going to propose a huge expansion of the yard. Is this change from an above ground stormwater system to a below ground, does that warrant a third party review? So if it doesn't, then you are making a decision just based on the information that you've been provided in the record. If you think that it does warrant a third party review, then you have other options for denying the application is incomplete, because it the applicant failed to pay the whatever it was, $10,000 additional fee for a third party review to look at the wetland impacts.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think because there were so many things thrown into this, that there was the enforcement action, there had been all these activities that they had done without permission that triggered the enforcement action. There were a lot of public comments, plus they wanted to have an expansion add in and a modification. So there are a lot of like layers to this. And so maybe it got lost in, there were twofold for my request for a third party. One was to understand the impact of the new things that they wanted to do. And the second one was just understanding the impact to say, is the enforcement of what we're asking for enough for how the wetlands been impacted over the years by them not implementing what was in their original plan, as well as the activities that they've done.
Well, we had talked about at the last call, I believe, the middle point that you were saying, Catherine, about understanding the impacts to the wetland in the several years since they were supposed to have done this work. My recollection was that it would be hard to do and may not result in any useful information. Am I mischaracterizing that, Alexis?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where you landed. I mean, so you're talking about looking at off-site wetlands and whether there's been, I mean, there are certainly no large deposits out there. When I've tromped around here, and it's not like there's an obvious pile of sediment that has washed off the site. So I would agree, there are limits to what a professional soil scientist or an engineer can surmise.
Okay.
I'm just gonna, my opinion and my one last time of this, just so I'm clear and that we're all clear, which is this resolution has to do with restoration of the unapproved extension areas, plural, right? Because there's that side, and then there was also behind, I believe, by the berm.
Well, that's separate.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. So just that area, okay. And everything else, as far as we've been told, is it's reverted back to the 2016 already approved plan, which means that it is approved for them to do everything within that plan already. And so the change to that would be the above ground versus underground catchment system, and that swale, to your point, the swale and the bottom left corner, which is undetermined future anyway.
Question mark.
Yeah, and so if I understand correctly, we're really talking about that is the only thing in our purview at this moment under this current enforcement. And then, so my last thought on that is just, I'm much more concerned about the area that was taken over that needs to go back to how it was. That's a large chunk that was eaten away into. As far as my opinion, which is not based in much else than my opinion at this moment, so take it for what it is that the underground catchment system is purportedly more effective than the above ground, and I'm more concerned about all the runoff in that lot, in that area, in all of that impenetrable surface than I am about a few feet of, or, you know, than I am about pretty much
Green space.
the green space. Exactly. That is going to be, in my opinion, negligible. I keep saying in my opinion because I may be wrong.
Well, but it's not entirely your opinion. It's also based on what you've heard thus far
Yes.
from the applicant,
I
etc.
feel like I'm just putting a big giant disclaimer on everything I just said because I don't want, you know.
Yeah, well, but it can't, this solely can't be based on our opinions. It has to be based also on what we've heard. But yes, heard. Thank you.
Heard.
Heard. Catherine? Oh, Catherine, do you mean to have your hand still up?
Not really. I mean, I guess you know, we heard, but there wasn't necessarily, I didn't see anything specifically that really showed any data or other than like the opinion of the applicant, you know, controlling the narrative of for what is better or worse. And so there's a lot of other factors in terms of like violations when you look at how they're storing the materials, the overflow, and kind of a lot of issues. So I do have concerns. And so having like a green buffer in terms of some of the activities or the proximity of materials or things, you know, it's been quite clear that it's not really top of mind in terms of being a good neighbor to the wetlands for the person in, you know, occupying the site. So I feel like there are some benefits to having a bit of a green buffer.
Point of clarification. So Brian's listening. So Brian represents the client, but he represents the client in a professional sense. So it's not the client telling us that one system is better than the other. It is the client's professional representative and designer, engineer telling us the one is better than the other. So there's slightly different. It's not even the same as a lawyer. You know, a lawyer we've had happen several times. They're like, this is not a violation. This is, you know, you may see a chicken, but it's a duck. It's not that. Because they're not scientists or engineers, whatever. They're just lawyers. So just FYI, but
Yeah,
I think
agree
that
on like, you know, but that's on one variable. So if you're talking about specifically the water and the water runoff and everything, but there are other variables that then get impacted in terms of the proximity of materials and activity to the wetland.
right. And so I think that's the root of the issue. I think we got two parts here. We've got the surface water management. I think we agree is probably more effective in the currently proposed plan. Okay, we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is that we've lost our buffer. We've lost the green space that we like to have adjacent to our wetlands. So, Alexis, do we have anything that we can use to weigh one against the other with regard to maintaining the function of the wetland that is a mere feet away from, yards away from where this is all happening?
Right. I mean, so you have some options. I'm looking for their little detail. You know, they had proposed on the northern end of their yard a 3-foot high, 2 concrete blocks with this earthen berm to kind of give it a kind of a hard line, but then a buffer inside. I don't know if that's palatable to I guess it depends on how much of a buffer you're looking at. So you've got this existing chain link fence. I think you can require that the perimeter have I don't know, 2 blocks or 3 blocks or 4 blocks and a related, you know, berm on the inside. If I mean, I don't know.
Well, but that's not the same
But
though. That's not
it's
just,
not the same
it's
as a
not
buffer.
having,
Right, so if you're really looking for a vegetated buffer, and I don't know if having a receptacle for stormwater coming off a yard is necessarily a buffer, right? That's another,
so. Right, so we've got that, we're still stuck there. We don't have anything we can stand on. Heather, give me 1 second. And then there's still the back door of saying, okay, they never fulfilled what was requested of their application by way of providing a third party opinion.
Mm.
So we can save that if we want, or we need to find a way to make our peace with the trade-off between water management and green space.
You
Go
can
ahead.
modify it and say, okay, you can do a below ground stormwater management, but the 10 feet or the 20 feet or whatever closest to the I don't know, wherever the
Existing
guess
chain link
the
fence,
chain link
the
fence,
limit of disturbance.
has to
Exactly.
be a planted buffer. I mean, you have to realize that
then-
you can't do trees here, and
Right.
you're talking, in order to do that, you can do some non-asphalt, I suppose, but having shrubs or trees would be very difficult over the system.
Yeah. Paul?
Okay, so I hear what Catherine's requesting along that bottom fence line below the concrete galleries. She's looking, you were requesting a green zone, I think. Well, the galleries aren't installed yet. Could they be asked to move them? I don't even know what direction that is going
The
up.
galleries can stay where they are if there's green space over the top of them. We do
But
it all the time.
You can plant over those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Can't plant
Not huge stuff.
large trees. Your surface elevation is at about 196, and the bottom of these units is at 193. So it's it's a shallow. It's subgrade, but it's not like it's a deep system.
Okay, so we could get shrub size, but maybe no trees there? Or is it not even enough room for that?
What
Or
would
is
you
it-
like to see, Catherine, what would you like to see there if they could plant?
I mean,
along
I'm happy that they want to improve, and it's a good faith move to improve the water catchment system to a better thing. But not having been in the 2016 conversation, my guess is that there was also a consideration beside just water catchment in terms of placing some of the buffers there. And so trying to preserve that where the grass was, and that just a green buffer is a good idea.
Yes,
Well,
right.
Whatever they can
area was
plant
just a proposal.
there.
though.
Well, that was in the approved plan, the 2016
yeah.
plan. So whatever they can grow there or that could provide a green buffer would be welcome.
I don't know if
In line with the 2016 planting plan.
Sorry, could we just pull, I was just gonna ask before if we could see the 2016 one more time. Thank you.
2018 they get
Where I couldn't find it on it.
20,
it's here somewhere, 2016. So this is what was originally approved.
Didn't see that. I clicked on like 5 things and all right. Just want to take one more look at this. Sorry. Appreciate it.
So in this plan, everything below where they have some bins and it says chain link fence right below the bins, was that all going to be green space?
Right, so this chain link fence here, and then this chain link fence here were existing. This is a proposed chain link fence. And then, you have to understand that this received minimal, well, it did not receive extended review in 2016. But yes, it seems to indicate that this was the silt fence or the limit of disturbance. This was the, let's see, existing pavement to remain.
And there's
which
this
the-
edge of pavement there, right? By the second chain link fence, the innermost. Yep. See edge of pavement right
Oh,
there?
there it is. Thank you. Edge of
Yeah.
pavement.
And
And
so there,
so
sorry.
this was a basin seeded with a variety of native seed mixes. This was a grass swale, and then this was, I think typically we interpret the silt fence as the limit of disturbance. So this was like we're not going to be, nothing was proposed.
But was existing broken up asphalt.
You're
It
right.
was, right. So this was existing, this was part of the parking lot in 1995. And then by 2003, it appears to have some stuff growing through it.
So in everything that was going into that catch basin, nothing was filtered. It was just, so you get sediment and,
Diesel or
diesel fuel.
oil dripping out of the
everything,
bottom of an engine.
Right. So it relied entirely on kind of bioattenuation of any of those pollutants through the grass swale and the plants in the basin.
So you end up concentrating the pollutants in the little catch basin.
Yep.
Sort of what they're doing on MLK, which is a whole different thing, so. All right,
And meanwhile, there has been no catchment of any of the pollutants because there hasn't been a catchment basin there.
right, but
That's
Yeah, so we
right.
don't know how much has run off in, the X number of years by wetland flags 107, 108, 105, 104. I don't know. I'm on the fence here. I wish I could just move this forward one way or another, but there's no obvious answer for me right now.
I just wish we could have moved it back to before the state gave it to them.
Well, yeah,
But that's not gonna happen.
no.
I guess my view is like, thank you very much for upgrading the water. It's the least you can do to remediate all the years that you've been just kind of running off straight into the wetlands. But according to the 2016 plans, which permits were, this is planted space.
Yep.
And buffer. So if you want to make an application to not have it planted space per the 2018 plans, then by all means, put in an application.
Okay.
Well,
So
I
to move this
think
forward,
that's what they're doing though, right? Is putting in an application.
yeah, and we don't have to right now, we still have time. Or we can, if someone wants to propose a motion one way or another, you're welcome to.
Catherine, just
I'm sorry. Well, to what Catherine was saying, and also what was slightly being discussed before about adding a planted buffer, could we include that requirement in the resolution that a portion of the Caltech system be a maintained natural space with seeding, native seeding over it? Like, is that something that we could require in the resolution and like have a good amount of space that would have been similar to the green space that would have been provided before with the wetland or with the stormwater management basin? And would anybody feel more comfortable with it that way?
So let's say splitting the 50 foot in half and say, okay, give us 25 feet of vegetated buffer from the property line to the edge of proposed concrete. And
I'd be fine with that.
And so what'll happen is I'm sorry, other commissioners want to chime in, but I want to talk about the consequences of doing that.
I mean, I think that's in line with what was in what was in the approved plan. So to say that, oh, well, we want to pave it over, that wasn't what was in the approved plan.
Okay. And so so we approve that either tonight or next week or next meeting. And if they don't like it, they just won't do it. And then, well, obviously they're on our radar. And so, I guess the resolution would need to include, and it almost always does include, very clear language about how quickly the work has to be done within a certain period, whatever. They don't do it, then they come back and we start this all over again, which I don't know, maybe is not the end of the world.
So if you were to approve an application with modifications, then their choice is to either appeal your decision or to accept your decision. And then if they accept the decision, they would have to implement it.
But if they appeal it, it's out of our hands. It goes to a court.
Yes, right.
But I mean, let's be honest. The third option is not do anything until somebody makes them do something.
That was
Yeah, but
option A.
I think that's not, that it's obviously you have some, we have all, including the applicant, has spent a lot of time trying to move something forward. So, and they're certainly on
ever hopeful.
Staff's radar.
And I mean, if they appeal, there are also interested parties, which I'm sure would also follow them from the public hearing into an appeal as well.
Good point. Good point.
I think that the applicant wants to have obviously, a yard. They're obviously pressed for space, right? So the applicant wants to have a yard. I do think that they want to comply. They're trying to get as much space as they can, but they're also attempting to be reactive to both your comments and the public comments.
All right.
To the full extent that you want. But.
If they appeal, I just want to also keep in mind, I believe they qualify under emergency services, correct?
Qualify for what?
There is, when we first discussed it, there were certain activities that, like, basically they need to be able to have room to do their job because they qualify as emergency services, and so there's some leeway within whatever they do. My preference, and though I think we all are in the same boat of none of us like the way that the direction this has gone, my preference is that I would rather see something done and adhered to. And if that is then enforceable after that point, like if they don't stick to this, then we are committed to making them stick to this, then it not going anywhere for a year. That's just but I also, I don't like the directions that it's gone in previously, so.
All right, so to move this forward, then I'll propose a motion. So I'm looking at, Alexis, your draft memorandum dated May 8th, 2025 for S16-499B, corrective action permit modification. The resolution, condition 3 shall be modified. Oh no, that's the planting of no less than 20 native shade trees, blah, blah, blah. Okay, never mind, not 3.
You can do 3 as an add-on extra sentence.
Well, no, I was thinking, let's go to number 7. If that's okay.
Yep.
So rather than shall be the site plan dated 12/18/2024 and last revised 3/18/2025 by Land Tech shall be modified to show all portions of the contributing drainage area conveyed to the proposed underground retention system be paved. The southern eastern limits of the contributing drainage area must be curbed with minimum 6-inch high curb. Northern limit shall have the block wall and berm noted on plan. So can I say maybe just after the minimum 6-inch high curb located no less than 25 feet in from the property line along the southeast side of the site? I said basically nothing else moves other than the extent of the pavement. Is that too simple?
Okay, so the southern and eastern limits of the contributing drainage area must be curbed with a minimum 6-inch high curb located no less than 25 feet.
From the eastern limit, or from the eastern. Yeah.
Less than 25 feet from the eastern limit
Of the yard or eastern property line or whatever we want.
of the eastern property.
And that may
Okay.
require slight adjustment to his location of the catch basin in the southeast corner of the lot. But I think that's okay.
Um,
Or we can just say, you know, adjustment to the location. of
yeah,
the
I
catch
mean,
basin,
so
blah, blah, blah.
there's not a lot of. I mean, I think it's purposely there at as low of a point.
Well, yeah, the pitch of the grade though, I mean, if we just push that line back, I mean, it should still it behave approximately the same way I would expect. And Brian's probably just jumping out of his chair right now, wishing he could say something.
No, the
We're
top-
all like,
That the
we're
whole time.
armchair doing his job. Sorry, Brian.
The topography map that he was showing, overlaying the site plan, it's all flowing down towards the bottom of the photo, the drawing.
Yeah.
So just moving that up, the flow is still going to be the same. And then they're going to grade it the way they need to grade it.
Well, I didn't think there was going to be any grading happening whatsoever.
It's going to be a
does the
little bit.
existing grade.
When they're
Get us
paving
there.
that, they might have to do a little bit, but
Okay.
don't
They
make the
do
water go to where
show-
it needs to go.
Yeah.
They do show a contour moving, and it looks like it's the 196 contour. And that actually makes the site a little. It looks like there's a little less pitch.
Right.
By moving that contour.
There you go. Okay. No objection then to that.
So, yeah.
All right. So the motion that I think is the extent to my modifications to
And so then are
the
you
memorandum
saying that
shall be approved as amended.
and so the curb is there, and then do you want to clarify that between the curb and the eastern property line is seeded with a native seed mix?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, is that where the berm is?
Well, right. There's some confusion. So the berm is just along the northern side, which is the
Oh,
northeast side. And there was actually that's how it's written in the resolution. I thought at one point Brian had said it turns the corner and comes down along the parallel to the property line to a certain point and then just continues as a curb. But the way the resolution is written now, I think it's unclear on the plans.
Yep.
So yeah, if you guys wanted to extend that down too, I mean, that's eating into another 15 feet of the yard. So we're almost back to the 50 feet that we were at before, the limit of the usable surface area of the lot. which I don't know
I
if
think you want to curve
that's,
for the
yeah.
areas that are, right. I don't think you can't really have a berm for the areas that are receiving stormwater. You
Yeah.
want something that then conveys it to the catch basin.
So
Okay.
I'm okay with just letting the berm stick to the north side. Is that okay with others as it's
Yeah.
written?
Fine
Yeah,
with that.
Okay.
keep it where it is.
All right. I think that's it, Alexis, as far as my motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion?
This
Please,
is
God.
6 months from decision, correct?
What?
Sorry, they have, my discussion is they have 6 months for implementation.
Is that what it says?
I don't
thought
remember.
that-
Yes.
Yeah, it said 6 months
So that would be from,
if we approve it now.
Today's date, that is from the completed within issuance. Yep. Right. So
okay.
issuance
good.
and approval.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, unanimous. Sorry for letting this one go longer than it should have, guys.
I don't think it was your problem.
No,
Well,
it was not.
could have done better.
We we believe and will follow you.
All right.
Sad saps.
Are you gonna ask for a second?
Speak
on
for
that,
yourself.
Catherine?
All right.
Yeah.
So you got a few more items.
Yes.
So if I may, hold on, let me
Hold on,
just
so
see.
we're not gonna, we just voted on the resolution, we're not going to,
Paul is queuing up the motion to dismiss the meeting.
no.
No, we've
not
still
that
got
part.
fourth items
Okay.
to go through.
So so you have right, you have 4 more items. You have a fee waiver, a determination of permit need, a bond request, and enforcement action. Since I'm looking at who's remaining, our steadfast attendees, and I would request that you move item 9, which is enforcement actions, first to deal with that, and then attend to your other things if you want to.
Item 9 or item 8?
Item, oh, it's mislabeled. It's item enforcement actions.
Enforcement actions. Okay, so I'll move to change the agenda to move enforcement actions up. Have a second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about V 25-1081, 19 Park Street.
Hi, yes. Hi, I'm Lee DeMarco. I'm land use technician. I'm gonna share my screen.
And I'll just, while Lee is prepping to share a screen, I know that Attorney Dolberg has done show cause hearings, but I'll just clarify that when the agency issues an order, we have to hold the agency has, when their agency staff issues an order, the agency has to hold a show cause hearing within 10 days of issuance of the order. And the purpose of tonight's show cause hearing is to allow the respondent to show cause if they have present any testimony as far as why they feel there is not a wetland violation. Following the show cause hearing, the agency will make the determination whether to modify and uphold, or withdraw the order. And so the process that we'll use is Ms. DeMarco will very nicely explain why the enforcement order was issued. And then we'll turn it over to the respondent's representative and then move forward. Go for it, Lee. You're sharing your screen very nicely.
Thank you, Alexis. Just a little background here. 19 Park Street is located here, just north. This is the town green down here. City Hall is down farther south on East Avenue. For reference, this is the Italian Corner Deli. And this is the new revamped Hartford Healthcare building previously Lillian August, a couple years ago, if that helps anybody orient themselves. The lot is developed with a multifamily building and a storage building in the rear. And then on the western property line along here is, that's Pond Brook, runs from north to south along this here. It's a tributary of the Norwalk River. And so it runs that way and it empties into the Norwalk River farther to the south down here. Zooming back in a little bit. Riparian wetlands occur along the lower areas, right adjacent to the brook, with larger trees and within the embankment. So in September of last year, I was doing an inspection at the Hartford Healthcare site on the other side of the brook, and looking across the brook, noticed what looked to be a stretch of new stone retaining wall along the rear of 19 Park Street. So we sent out an inspection request that same month, and Alexis and I went out there in September of last year, and we observed that a loose stone wall along the shoreline had been lengthened and expanded upon at the water's edge. So this is the view looking towards 19 Park, and then this is standing on the 19 Park site. You can see the fill. These trees are evident. You can see that this new stretch of wall was backfilled. Materials that when we visited, I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. It was piled along the top of the shoreline. And then here's another view. This is looking towards, that's the Hartford Healthcare building in the background. This is the most western tip of the property. And I'll show an aerial that might help.
Lee, if you can stay on this picture one second. So to the left in this picture, is that the adjacent property where no work has been done? And would that be a decent way to estimate how much 19's elevation has been raised? You know what I mean? Like the dark brown dirt to the left, and then there's the light brown stuff. Okay, so it's any estimate as to how many feet that is?
You mean, well, okay, so
the tip of that
kind
corner
of estimated that the wall's about 75 feet long and about 6 feet high. And let me get back here.
So they effectively buried those tree trunks 6 feet?
Well, yes.
Approximately, yeah.
Approximately.
That'll kill 'em.
Here's another view. I can actually go to this map here. So when we were out on the site, we measured, there's the storage building. So now this is the where that point was.
Right.
And you can see the contour lines. This is an older topo map that approximates what the contour lines were before and where the wall was previously. And we measured the new wall to be along this red line here, an approximation of where we believe the wall is. So in addition to, I'm sorry, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I thought you had more. No.
Thought you were interrupting.
I'm apologizing for interrupting.
Got it. You're forgiven.
Thank you.
Here is another issue is that this is a 2019 aerial. This storage building in the rear, we figured had been expanded this way without zoning or wetland permits sometime between 2019 and 2020, I believe. And this is a 2019 aerial, and then you can see
And so just go
the
back to
expanded shed, and this bit is new, or shed, I should say, storage building, and then this is the new wall. I'll toggle back and forth. That might help a little bit.
so where
That's
the
the
boat
old,
is, Lee, is that's the wall, like you can kind of see the edge of lawn, and then there's a boat, and it looks like a wall, and then it drops down, and that's the embankment where the trees and vegetation are.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. So you can see this extends quite a bit farther out here. So we sent out a notice of violation in November of last year, directing the respondent to submit a corrective action permit application. That included a site plan showing all current and pre-existing conditions and a plan to restore the area. And I had some communication in December with the respondent. He had asked if I could find any old surveys on file here in the office, which I was able to provide him with an older survey. And then we issued the cease and restore order in the beginning of this month, citing the same activities we had detailed in the violation notice. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. And that is the 19 Park Street cease and restore order that Alexis sent to us
Yes.
on Friday. Okay. Mr. Dolberg, would you like to?
Yes. Good evening.
Hold the floor.
I'm new to the matter. I'm seeing this for the first time. I've been to the site. I am meeting with Ian Hall on Tuesday at the site to review the expansion of the storage building. It was my understanding, talking to my clients, that only a top small portion of a pre-existing wall was altered, nothing else, and that no wetlands, no vegetation was removed from the original installation of that wall. However, I would like some time to sort of explore this, and I don't know that my client has seen the photos that you are showing me, or they're aware of them certainly, but I haven't seen those. So it will give me an opportunity to talk to them. I will talk to Alexis and or Lee about what we can do or not do to rectify this situation and address it. But I ask for some small amount of time, and as I said, I'm new to the matter.
Well, thanks for sticking with us. To move things along, unless commissioners want to raise their hands to ask any questions, I'll just go ahead and move to uphold the cease and restore order for 19 Park Street. I don't think I have any modifications to it.
I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All in
Uh,
favor?
I-
Heather, is that a you?
Yes,
Yes.
me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. DeMarco and Mr. Dolberg. Wow, that was a big investment of time
For
into not much satisfaction, but thank you.
Educational, though. I
hanging
admire
in.
your dedication to spend this time, but you're
Well,
welcome, and thank you
ditto.
for that.
Okay.
Alexis pays us well.
Yes.
We get time and a half. She doesn't.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
We'll
night.
talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Moving on back to, let's just by default go back to the previous agenda. So that gets us to determination of permit need for 70 Witch Lane. Witch Lane? Every time.
Yes. Let's go. So. Some of you are.
What is it?
My internet is not working again. Hold on a minute.
Don't worry, we have plenty of time.
Yeah, I'm, what's that?
You can jump on Liz.
Yeah, I'll jump on Lee's real quick and we'll just finish this up. Hold on.
Was it jinx? We had too many short ones in a row. Was that it?
It's like watching the silent movies.
You guys just draw it on a whiteboard or something. Just give us a.
All right. I've been having I have not been able to connect to the internet. It like goes anyway. I don't have a way to do this. Lee, it's a long story, but we're so technologically challenged in this office. I guess what I would recommend is that you table the 3 items: the fee waiver, the determination of permit need, and the bond release request to your next meeting.
I love that idea.
Because
I
I
love
can't
that
show
idea
you
too.
anything.
Okay, so be it. Let's do that then. We're tabling 70 Witch Lane. We're tabling S23-631 207 West Rocks Road. We can talk about approval of minutes.
I did have one thing on the minutes that I saw, just I don't know if it matters.
Throw it out there.
The conversation about 40 feet, 50 feet to 40, where it said, oh geez, now I'm losing it. It said something about like, I lost it. I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Oh, second page.
Well, I just don't know. I can't. Anyway, am I reading the right ones? I don't even know anymore. But I think we had. I don't know if that was the agreement we came to. Was all I was gonna say.
And I'm sorry, which property is this?
70 Toilsome, I think.
It was toilsome.
It says, so there was a discussion about the size of the Mount Laurel. Ms. Brown also suggested the sensitive fern be located closer to the wetlands. There was also a discussion about the size of the buffer, which on the plan was only 40 feet. The applicant was asked to make it 50 feet.
Other way around.
And then the applicant, was asked, like
Oh.
you asked the applicant was asked to make it 50 feet.
Oh,
And then there was like a failed
Yeah.
motion, and then Clocky made a motion to approve the draft resolution with changes to condition 4, as well as a change regarding the buffer, which the boulders would be in an arc.
Which I think my only thing was I remember landing on 45 feet. That was it. That was literally my only like an arc that somehow constituted a median of 45 feet. That was my only piece of feedback on the minute. It does. We spent a
No,
lot of
it's a-
time on 5 feet. That was all
It's-
I.
Yeah, again, not a great payback on our
Yeah.
return on investment. But Alexis, is it clear to you, because you're the one that's going to enforce it?
Yes, and
Okay.
the resolution that you adopted at the end was clear.
Okay. Do you think the minutes conflict with the resolution we adopted?
Conflict? No.
Okay, great. Then
Clarifying? No.
I just, that was all I saw. Otherwise, you're right. That was the discussion. And if the resolution indicates what we did agree on, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with approving the minutes.
And that means you are now officially
Motioning to approve the minutes.
you're motioning. Great.
I'll
Could I have a
second
second?
I'll
Any
second.
discussion? Thanks, Paul. All in favor?
I
Aye. All right, everybody's in.
I knew
Thanks,
I was
Claire.
going to regret saying anything.
All right, and I'll have Catherine abstaining since you weren't here at the last meeting.
Yeah, I abstained, sorry. I just.
But
was
she
moving
watched on
along.
YouTube.
But that's
I
true.
watched on YouTube.
That's true.
That's true.
Okay, Alexis, unless you have some burning
Nothing.
desire to share anything with us, we're gonna buzz past comments of staff and comments of commissioners. Unless anybody else has anything burning they want to share.
Well,
No,
I'm
but I
just-
do have to get you a poster back, Alexis. I have a poster for you and some extra flyers.
From Earth Day.
And I have one thing, just a quick thing. I don't know if anybody saw it, but the Norwalk River Water Association, Watershed Association, they're saying that the city Parks and Rec is planning on putting artificial turf on the ball fields up in Broad River. And that area has well water. So it doesn't affect us because it's 1,000 feet away from the Norwalk River, but I know Catherine, when we were talking about a specific Range Road property, artificial turf came up and was a big, item
Sticking point.
of discussion and sticking point, but I don't believe the city's actually putting artificial turf in a public ball field. But that's just my comment.
They should just throw some trees because I got the worst sunburn I've gotten in 10 years watching my son play baseball there 2 weeks ago. And it's just open to the elements.
Yeah. Anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
it's the arsenic and all that runoff from like all the pellets that they put in there, and it's also, it's not great to breathe in, and yeah, they're.
cool. Okay, well, you all are troopers. Thank you for joining. I'm going to move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All third.
Okay,
Or-
Heather, Catherine, all in favor?
I.
All right.
It's been a big motion.